New to me. Awesome. Awesome. Susan Trent. Whoa. Okay, so we have lots of new people. Holy smokes. Okay. Yeah, awesome. Okay, that's super cool. So I'll give you guys a little bit of history just before we start too. I've been doing workshops for about 4 years now. Have I been doing this for 4 years? Yeah, so I've been doing these for 4 years. I've been with ACDC. I'm a marketer here. Good to have you, Roger. Good to have you all, actually. There's a fair amount of you. That's awesome. So yeah, my name's Adam. I've been a marketer and a content creator for ACDC for about 4 years. And workshops are kind of like a fun project. Hey, Sharon. Yeah, me too. I was assuming everybody is. Yeah, that they were sort of a new project for me, and I just wanted to start doing like full length, I guess, proper workshop tutorial webinar style content for people in that use the software. I also noticed too that like a lot of our competitors' softwares too, they don't really have this kind of style workshop. That's like kind of like it's like a live tutorial, but there's also like aspects of it that are for question asking and that sort of thing. And I do my best to answer every question that comes up. Now, actually, speaking of which, um, that being said, I'm going to give you guys all my email. Price at acdsystems.com. That's me. Um, and actually, here, let's just do this. Let's make this look pretty so you can find it when you're there. You go. But anyway, if you have any questions during the workshop that I'm not able to answer, please email me. So my email, like because ACDC is a relatively small to medium sized company, I often get lots of questions from people in workshops. I get lots of questions from people on our YouTube page. I get lots of personal emails, and I do my best to answer people's questions and also send them to their respective departments within our company. And so if someone has a question or something like that, I'll just go ahead and right away and ask a developer. Like Gary's question here, which is there any integration between ACDC and On1 PhotoRaw or DxO? I know a partial answer to that, in the sense that we have a function called external editors within ACDC that you can set up an external editor so you can work within ACDC, use its management functionalities, that sort of thing, and then basically click on an image in your Tableau, in your folder or something like that, and then just bring it into another software. So, and that enables you to make edits and change like that things in the software. And the editors function is actually just right here. It's on the UI, just up in the top left-hand corner here. But I don't know whether or not the keywords will be recognizable. So I can ask the developers that question for you and get back to you, but you'll have to email me. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Okay, so let's get started. We have about 100 people in here, which is awesome. Okay, so topic today is going to be keywords and categories and sort of the sub functions of keywords and categories. There's lots of things to know about it. A couple caveats to this. I'll do my best to answer as many questions as I can as they pertain to keywords and categories. If you have other questions that come up during the, please email me. That's why I provided my email in the section there. And yeah, that'll be a part of what we're talking about today, Mark, as adding notes. Notes in the sense that we're going to be talking extensively about metadata today, so that comes up. And yes, yeah, so if you have any questions, please email me because I'm not going to be able to answer everything. And what else is there to say? Oh, I try to do my best to put these up on YouTube the day after or within the week so that people can rewatch them, because I get lots of questions right now like, hey, I love this, but I would like to rewatch it, and we will do that. Dave asked, does ACDC integrate fairly well Topaz and Luminar products? I don't know. Please email me. Okay, so let's talk about ACDC. So I've just got a bunch of birds in my folder here. I've created this folder that in essence is going to be used for this workshop today. And the reason why I've selected a bunch of bird photos is because it allows us to create keywords that pertain to the specific birds and categories that contain to the overall topic. So when you're in ACDC, and what we're going to be covering today is exclusively going to be within the manage function. That's where we're going to be living for today's workshop. So those of you that have Pro or Home, this is entirely relevant to that conversation because the same functionalities exist within those products. In Manage mode, we have in essence 3 areas that we're going to be using today. The first obviously is the preview panel where we have all these lovely thumbnails and our images of our birds here. The second, of course, is the folders panel, which is on the left-hand side here, and by function, the cataloging section. Cataloging is a means of navigating to images that have certain metadata or ACDSee metadata applied to them. And I will be explaining why this matters as we talk more about the categories and keywords. But when you click on these values in cataloging, like for example, a specific keyword, it will bring up every image that is on your hard drive that has those keywords. So it's a quick way to navigate to all of those files, even know that those files may be in different folder locations on your hard drive. So what it does is it looks for all of those files with those specific keywords. In this case, we could name an image hummingbird, for example, and it'll search for every image on our hard drive, regardless of location, and then present that image, those images to us. So as you can see, adding keywords is a really meaningful way of creating a good database and like creating a good structure of searching for your images. Which brings up the question, how does one apply keywords, categories, and other means of cataloging to an image? Well, all of that information is held within the properties panel, which is on the right here. So I'm just going to select an image and it's going to bring up this information. There's information that I've covered in other workshops like ratings and tagging and labels. Those won't be the focus of our conversation today, but if we were in essence to rate an image with something like a red label, for example, when we go to search for it, it'll search for every image in our hard drive that contains that red label, of which that hummingbird is also one of them. So this same method applies to keywords. Let me find my folder again. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding keywords and categories to these images in order for us to better navigate throughout our hard drive. Categories and keywords look very similar, and they are. There's going to be some differences in how they relate to metadata, though. So we'll get into that in a little bit more depth later. But so we can, so what we're going to do, I guess, to start is let's create an overarching category, and then let's talk about methods of creating categories. And let's do the same actually for keywords as well. This part is less complicated. It's pretty simple. So on the properties panel, on the right-hand side, we have a section for categories and keywords. This is the section we're gonna be assigning those values to our images, not looking for them. That will be held within the catalog panel on the left, but assigning those values. Okay. Christopher asked, does the metadata get added to the original file or stored in a database that does not change the file? Yes and no, and that we will cover that. I promise you that's going to be very shortly after here. But yeah, we will definitely cover that. So I'm going to, let's just create a category to begin with. So we can do so by adding a new quick category set or editing our categories. Let's create a new, actually, I just want a singular overarching category. Instead of creating a category set, in this case, I have like water, rain, forest, sky, building, sunset, trees. These are all in relation to landscapes. I don't need that. I just need a single category in this case. So what I'm going to do is underneath, there's this categories quick search area here, and I'm just going to add a singular new category. And it'll bring up this little dialog box here. And what we can do is we can create a new top level category, which is what we'll do. We can create sub categories within this, and the same will be true for keywords, which we'll illustrate shortly. But which would mean that we could have a second category. So if you had, for example, like a category of vehicles and then a subcategory of a bicycle, that bicycle could have both the category of a vehicle and a bicycle. Anyway, in this case, I'm just going to simplify this, let's just call this category birds. And then I'm going to give it a image of this dog here. That's perfect. And so what I could do is then I could obviously select all of our images within our box here, or within this folder, and give them all the category of birds. A couple things happen. There's a bit of a flag that appears here, and also this barrel that appears here. So the flag is, first and foremost, it just means that there has been a category that is assigned. This image is a member of a category. And then the second image here, this little bucket that lives there, it means that there is pending metadata, and we'll cover this shortly as well. But it's just important to note that this little icon here tells you that this information is currently temporary. The birds category is temporary. I don't believe there is a limit on the subcategories, Robert. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a good question. You can email me and I can find out with the developers. I've never tried to make like a 300 subcategory list, but yeah, I think that's possible. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and we've added a singular category. What we're going to do now is, because these are all categorized as birds, that's ideal. Let's make keywords that differentiate those animals. And the way to do that would be to go into the keyword panel. And then what we're going to do in this case is we're going to actually create a quick keyword set. But what I don't want to do is assign a new keyword to every single image. So let's do this instead. I'm just going to unselect because I don't want them all to be labeled as every single bird. I'll just start with this image. So I'm going to click on the keyword section and I'm going to create a new keyword set. And what that's going to do, and again, the way categories works is very similar. It's going to create a little like row by row set that we can create here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start filling this content. Let's say we might end up making more. Let's keep the columns the same. Let's add like let's go like that, because we might add a whole bunch more later on. So I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to add, these birds to my list. Flamingo, gull, let's see, hummingbird, kingfisher. Let's see, what else do we have here? Let's move this down. So we've got macaw, we have an owl, we have parrot. And as you noticed here, like you can increase the amount of rows, so it's quite large, and the number of columns, so that you can accommodate for a fair large amount of specific keywords. This might be relevant for people that are like creating like different images of like different vegetation and stuff like that, and they need like the different phylum and that sort of thing, the sort of variations there. But it just gives you lots of opportunities to bring those up. Where were we? Parrot, I said robin, and then finally toucan. Okay, so that's we're going to hit OK, and it'll give us the opportunity in this case to name this preset. So I'll just name it birds and hit OK. And so when we go to bring up birds, we can edit these quick keywords by clicking the edit section, and we can go and add more as we see fit. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to start assigning these keywords to these images. So we'll start with this one. I'm just going to click peacock. And then you'll notice that on our keywords panel here, that there's been a little check mark that has been applied, and now that information is a keyword on the image. The keywords can also have subcategories. So for example, if you had a category of an owl, let's name this one an owl, we can go about adding a subcategory to this. So I'll add a new category by right-clicking on it, and then it'll automatically know that to create a subcategory. So we could create like, let's say a horned owl, for example. And so we've specified, or can specify now, that there's a subcategory within that. There's some odd, yeah. So I'm just going to finish applying those categories, but you can see that we can add subcategories, subkeywords rather, keywords to any of these individual keywords. So let's go do that. I'm just going to apply flamingo, gull here, gull, hummingbird. Just slowly going through here and applying these, kingfisher. And as you'll notice that as I apply these keywords, more will be added to our quick keyword list here as well. Just going to, oops, oh yeah, that's already assigned. So if I was to try to assign it again, it would ask me whether or not I wanted to turn it off. Just go through and finish this, and then I'll have a look at some of the questions that are coming in here. And then finally, these last two cans here. Cool. I don't know that one. Yes, answered that. Subcategory or hierarchical keywords. So again, there's a lot of flexibility with these. And we're going to get into sort of identifying the differences between those two things and how those the differences between categories and keywords begins to be emphasized is how they're sort of used to find certain things or use them with metadata. Yes, you can select multiple images at once and apply a keyword. Yeah, I mean, I could have taken like all of my parrots here and applied them the same keyword. Use a bird categories to parrot. So the bird category and the individual keywords are operating as two different things. So let's search now, and it'll actually make a lot more sense. So now that we've applied these, all these birds now have a category, and all of them also contain keywords. Let's take a look at how we would catalog these, or how we could bring these images up. So I'll navigate to our catalog panel, and you'll notice that if I just click the birds here, all these images will come up. There they all are. But I could also apply a, in this case, there's a little flag that pops up to the left of our category. What we can also do is apply a flag in a keyword maintaining this bird category, and it'll filter the list. So we go parrot. It now is displaying all of the birds, right, that also contain the parrot keyword, right? We can unflag both of these. We can flag hummingbird to bring up just the images with the keyword of hummingbird, or kingfisher for that matter. And so now that that information has been stored on our image, we can go about bringing those images up or displaying those images. Okay, Gary asked, thinking ahead, can the keywords be exported to perhaps import to another product? Product, no, I don't know, but they can be exported and imported. And actually, the topic, one of the things we're going to talk about in a second too, will be how to basically pull that information from an image. If another user is using ACDSee, for example, you can gather those keywords and add them to your own. Okay, so what have we done so far? We've basically taken all these images, we've applied an overarching category to them, and then we have applied individual keywords to each of these images. Then we've sort of gone about and displayed, in this case, how we can individually bring up these images based on those criteria. So now let's look at the difference between keywords, okay, that we apply in ACDSee, which we've done right there, ACDSee keywords, and the keywords of something called iptc. So I'm just going to close this panel for a moment now and bring up the metadata panel. So if I close these guys, and if I click on an image, like this one, for example, under the ACDSee metadata panel, there will be the information, the keyword of gull, the one that we've added to this image here, or for example, hummingbird here, or an owl here. This one has a sub keyword of horned owl. So that information is within the ACDSee metadata panel. Okay. But some of you might be aware that there's also a keyword panel within iptc, and these things are different. So the ACDSee metadata keyword, okay, the one that says like macaw here within this panel, this is information that pertains to specifically ACDSee. This information is what it is it is that keyword in essence that you can use to therefore in the future like name other images as it comes up. So that information, what it does is it really is useful for searching for photos. And again, we reference that within the catalog panel. But there's also means of quick searching via that same method. So this image has the keyword of macaw. If I was to search for macaw in this case, I'll just place it into the quick search panel. It will bring up that image. In this case, it'll bring up that image, both because the title of it and also, in this case, the keyword of it. If we're to type in hummingbird, we could bring up that information as well. Actually, let's go about renaming one of these to just like, I don't know, we'll name it something that it isn't, like a car. So if we go about adding hummingbird, we can still bring up that image, even though that its title is different from its keyword. So when we quick search for things, we are taking into account the structure of that metadata. So in this case, those keywords that we've added. Okay, so now the interesting thing is, like I said, there's this iptc keyword. So if we were to add a keyword to this hummingbird image here, let's say, let's add something really random. Let's add like, I don't know, a peach, for example, okay? When we go to quick search that field, the iptc field, if I just type in peach, it's going to bring up that image, which makes it seem very similar to that of the ACDSee metadata. The difference is, if we were to create a cataloging function, okay, so I'm going to go back, click on my image, and go back to the organize panel, and let's just create a new keyword. Let's create a new keyword. Let's call it peach, for example. This image does not have that keyword applied. But if we were to use peach, it's not going to bring up that image. And the reason why is because that iptc keyword and that ACDSee keyword are functionally different things. I'm just going to take a moment here to answer some of these questions. These keywords, so Mark asked, are these keywords just under the birds category? So these keywords are basically tangential to the category of birds. My hummingbird, my owl, that sort of thing can have the bird category. It can also have the nature category. It can have the animal category. It can have all of these categories. They live in sort of different different realms, and they function in very similar ways, but they can have both of those properties. Can these keywords be recognized by other editors? So that's part of the aspect of what we're doing here. Is I'm sort of outlining the keyword function or I'm trying to differentiate rather between the iptc keywords that are keywords that are within every file. Okay. When you receive any image, these iptc codes are within that image. Then there's these EXIF values that are within every image. The difference being is this proprietary category, which is that ACDSee metadata category I'm talking about. So when you have these fields, obviously the ACDSee metadata, you write to the file, okay? You add this information to the file within ACDSee. The EXIF category and the iptc category can be written to an ACDSee as well. The difference is that in this case, you need to have a file type that you can write to. JPEGs and TIFFs, for example, are writable files. And so you're going like, okay, what does that mean? Well, let me explain. So a raw file, you can't write to a raw file. And this is the case for every single editor that's out there. You can't add information to a raw file. The raw file is a proprietary file that is taken by the camera. So, and all these companies that create these variety of different editors and managing softwares, they don't have access to that information. So when they write information about a file, like when we add a keyword to this raw file, it creates something called an XMP file. In this case, it's a sidecar file. And I can show you that. I'm going to show you that within our folder structure here. So I'm just going to use Windows here in this case to navigate to this exact file. And because we've added a keyword of peacock and, a category and a keyword to this file, there's going to be some information in that folder, and it'll show us that XMP profile exists. So here we are. So we have our folder here. We just need to go about embedding that information. So I'm going to click this image. And actually, I'm going to go about embedding all of that. So I'm going to select all of the images here in this, this folder. And I'm going to go and I'm going to bring up our metadata panel. 1 second here. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, this little bucket that's on the left-hand corner here, that's a flag, and it says it's a pending metadata flag. So in each of our images, we have this pending metadata. So what we need to do is we need to write that, or we need to embed that metadata within the file. So I'm going to look for those look for the metadata panel, which is in Tools and Metadata, and I'm going to embed those keywords that we've added to these files. So let's just embed it within the selecting files here, and it'll bring up this guy. So ACDSee metadata, including categories, keywords, ratings, color labels, and other metadata. I'm going to click embed. And then what it's going to do is it's going to remove that pending metadata flag. So we were talking about a raw image here. So now that we have that now that we've embedded that keyword, there's this little XMP profile that's created right next to this raw image that we have here. So when I was saying earlier that you can't write to a raw file, well, that's why this little sidecar file has been created. And this sidecar file is the file that contains the information of, in this case, the keyword. So when Len, you asked earlier that can these keywords be recognized? Can they be recognized by their editors? Those ACDSee metadata keywords won't be recognized by their editors, but these iptc keywords can be recognized by their editors. So what I can do now is I can show you how you can take those ACDSee metadata keywords and then move them over to the iptc so that they're recognized universally. As a note, okay, when you add iptc information or EXIF information, or you add ACDSee metadata to a JPEG or a TIFF, these are considered writable files, okay? Like files that can have that information written directly onto the file. That information gets stored in it. So if I was to add, so we have our images here of this hummingbird. We have this one with the keyword of peach. Here, let's add this guy right here. I'm just going to add another keyword, hummingbird. I'll just add blue as a category as well, or as a keyword as well. That information is stored within that file. So if I was to give this to a friend of mine, this image, if he was to look at this file, he would see that that file can basically has those two keywords assigned to it. So I can assign iptc and EXIF metadata within ACDSee. I can do that all within this manage function. And additionally too, but I can take that information that would be ACDSee metadata, this section right here, and I can move that information, those keywords that I've added right here, onto our iptc panel, so that that information is universal, like it's stored there as well. So let's do that. I'll show you what I mean. Let's go back to organize. So we have, yeah. Okay. Let's do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I have all these keywords and I want to use these ACDSee keywords that I've created. I want to add them to the iptc panel so that those keywords that I've created in ACDSee can also be then applied and then seen on that image, even if the user doesn't have ACDSee. So I will go to this panel right here, the metadata presets panel. And I'm going to go to manage presets. And it'll bring up this little box here. Oh man, I've got some questions I need to get to as well. Let's do that in a second here. So underneath the manage metadata presets, there's this little box here that has keywords written in it. So if I was to click on this arrow to the right of it and said insert metadata, what I can do is I can take that ACDSee metadata and I can fill this keyword panel with it. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to click on ACDSee metadata and on keywords. Hit OK. And yes, oh yes, let's name this preset. It'll prompt me to name it, and I'll say, let's call this ACDSee metadata, or actually ACDSee keywords to iptc. There we go. And hit OK. Oh, yeah, we'll override it. That's fine. I have already made one. So when I go to use that function, it's going to add another, it's going to add those keywords that I've created in ACDSee to this field. So let's do it to an image that doesn't have that. I'll click on this macaw here. I will click on, let's see here, manage presets. And then I'm going to use that one. And then so it's going to populate this image that had no iptc keywords, and I'll hit apply. And that it includes any of those keywords that I've added to this field. So zooming out, what am I doing? What I want to do is I want to create as many keywords as quickly and easily as I can in ACDSee. And I'm going to do that because I can navigate to those files very quickly and easily using the catalog panel. But there becomes a problem. And the problem is, it's like, well, I want to be able to also provide this file to someone else in the future and have that information be written onto that, in this case, a writable file like a JPEG or a TIFF. And I want those keywords to be then applied. So that's why I went through the process of adding this preset, is so that in this case, I can take that information that I've created and cultivated within ACDSee and then move it on to that iptc field that someone can then see that keyword and basically see it and bring it up as they look at their images. If they had ACDSee, then that information, as long as I embedded it, those things like macaw or the owl or horned owl, ACDSee metadata that I've added within this panel, all of that would be visible to them. And the way that they can get that information from a file, I will show you right now. Let's answer some of these questions, because there's a lot of them. And that was a big section of what I'm talking about here, is the differences between iptc and metadata. So let's add them. Let's have a look here. Okay. So Gary asked, did you say that the keyword was stored in the photo? The keyword is stored as metadata, okay, in the file if it's a writable file. Writable file examples are JPEGs and TIFFs. Files that require a sidecar where those keywords are stored are example are like raw images, for example. That's why when I was showing you earlier that folder, I'll bring it up again, that XMP folder contains those keywords that we added. Navigating to the 7th. Yeah. So when we added the peacock keyword to this image right here, that's where that raw image or that this XMP file is. It's the file that contains those keywords because we can't write specifically to a raw file, not like we can a JPEG and a PNG, or sorry, a TIFF rather. So when we go about making these keywords, they are going to be they're going to be visible to another ACDSee user. They'll have that information, no problem. That'll be stored in that file. It's when someone isn't an ACDSee user that we have to go through the process of, in essence, adding that information to the presets. And when we went about moving that those keywords from the EXIF, from the ACDSee metadata to the iptc metadata, and we did so by creating a preset that says, "Hey, Adam, these keywords here, these iptc keywords, are going to be the same as your ACDSee keywords." Okay, thinking ahead, can keywords be exported to perhaps another important other products? I'll explain that very shortly. If I'm doing people and families, how would facial recognition work with this? Okay, so facial recognition in Ultimate and Pro and Standard, actually now, and Home now, is an ACDSee value. It's an ACDSee metadata value. So when you go about adding names and faces to your images, they're catalogable. They're basically viewable in the same way. So if you go to your people panel on the left here, that information is viewable to you there. So when you go and add like Stacy and Carlos and all these people to your names on your images, that information gets added to your catalog panel and is then viewable to you right there. So facial recognition does work with this, and that ACDSee metadata is stored in your file in the same way that these keywords are that I've just been talking about. So they would be, again, visible to someone as long as they're embedded within that file. Okay. Theodore asked, if I send photos to another person who uses ACDSee, would he be able to use my categories? Yes, they can. Okay, so that was where we were getting, and it's a great question. So let's answer that one. So you've gone through the process. Let's just go back in time a little bit. Let's go back to organize and look at what we've done. Okay, just to back up a little bit. So we have these two macaw images, right? And they have the keyword and category. Their category is bird. Their keyword is macaw. And we've gone through the process of going to the tools panel, and we've now embedded those keywords in the file. Great. So if someone wanted to view this file that you gave it to another user that has ACDSee, and they want to take that keyword, what they would do is they could go through the process of gaining that from the file. And I'll show you how. Let's see here. Okay, so what we would do is we would go to tools, metadata, I believe, import keywords. Oops, no, sorry. Let's see here, database, catalog files. There we go. So you just sent your friend, like Mike, a huge collection, say like 300 images. And so Mike has those images, he opened them up in ACDSee, and each of those image has keywords and categories and all these things added to them. Now, if ACDSee was to just import if he then had those files and he imported all of those files, and he's looking at them in his, one of his folders, well, it wouldn't be right if it just automatically added all those keywords and categories to his pre-existing list of keywords and categories, right? Because then all of his structures and his conventions just go out the window, because you might have different structures and conventions of adding keywords and categories and that sort of thing. So we add a period where you opt into that. You decide that, hey, I want this person's keywords and categories from their files that are embedded within it. I want that information. Add that, please, ACDSee, to my ACDSee's database. And you do so by cataloging your files. So let's suggest that I've selected all these images here. I'm going to go to my database. These are all the images that my friend had sent me with specific keywords and categories. I'll go to database, catalog files. And from within here, this allows you to choose the folder location, so the area that you've saved your images. And importantly, okay, import the catalog files, ACDSee metadata, including categories, keywords, tags, and collections. So from here, you would click that, and then it would add that information to this panel here. So when you're looking at your keywords, all of Mike's keywords would be then added to yours. So it gives you this ability to opt into that information, because otherwise your database would be filled with all of these keywords and categories that you didn't necessarily want. Does that make sense? But yes, you can absolutely get those categories from those files as long as they're embedded. Daryl asked if I use a different software, Resizer, for example, and save the new image, will the category keyword follow the image? That's a good question. I think it will. So you've saved a keyword to an image in like the iptc panel, for example, like the one that writes it to the file. And you save it, and then you resize the image. Unless the software that you're using blanks all of the metadata information, I believe that information would be saved. There would be some sort of function within the software that allows you to, I guess, turn that off, or to, when you save a new file, blank out all the iptc and blank out all the EXIF metadata. That information would be then removed if that was the case. But I would say that any good software that allows you to resize it would probably give you the ability to maintain that information. Okay. Yes. So Richard asks, can an existing keyword be moved into another keyword as a sub keyword? I believe you can. So if we were to take our Kingfisher here, we could take that, or no, that would unassign it. But what we can do is, let's see here. We have horned owl. I think the only way that you'd be able to move selectively. Oh no, yeah, it looks like we've done it there though. Then okay, so let's take a look at the metadata and see how it applies. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. So we have applied Kingfisher and horned owl, but not the owl category. So in this sense, this is what you're talking about. You can move another sub keyword into another keyword. So when we take a look at our Kingfisher here, we go back to the metadata panel and look at our AXIF metadata. The value is horned owl, which is a sub keyword, with Kingfisher, which is the keyword. So the answer to that is yes, you can. Thomas asked, you can create subcategories for each bird type under the main category of birds and then search for them through categories only, which is true. What is the benefit of using keywords over categories? They're very similar functions. I would suggest there is a means in the sense when you're going to catalog your images, you have more fields in this case, or these sort of easy select functions to differentiate between them. So you have you can create like broader structures. It's mostly for like the management function of it. But the answer to your question is they are very similar in terms of the way that they operate. So you could use categories instead of keywords if you wanted to. I suppose that in many users' case, they might create, like you said, subcategories of birds, and then they might use descriptions in the keywords panel. They might use like colors and things like that instead. And I don't want to really specify or take too much time investing in the fact that they are that different. Like they have very similar functionalities. The reason why there's two of them in this case is to give you like a broader range. And I believe that early on in the software's development, it was requested that they had secondary functions of finding those files. Okay, let's see here. I'm still trying to get through some of these questions before we go on. So where is the ACDSee metadata stored? Great question. Okay, so when we add that ACDSee metadata, it's not stored. It's temporary. Think of it as that. When I open up my ACDSee again, if we hadn't embedded this, it's still going to be visible to me because it's in my database. The process of embedding it is basically like adding that information to the file itself. So you're taking that information and you're going and you're saying like, oh, I want that ACDSee metadata, this macaw keyword, to be embedded within this file, so that if I was to provide this image to another user, to someone else who had ACDSee, that information would be then visible to them. But it's until it's embedded within the file, it is not stored in the file, and that's really important because if I want that information to be visible to someone else, or alternatively, say my computer blows up, right, and my database is then gone with it, right, or I get a new version of ACDSee that hasn't linked those databases yet. Well, that information would be then not in that file because you've not gone through the process of embedding it. Embedding it like makes it's actually like a very useful tool to have because it now enables you to gather that information from the file. So earlier, when I was talking about cataloging files for your friend Mike, right? Well, I can easily catalog my own categories and keywords from my own files, right? Like I can gain that information from that. So in the instance where I was using an external hard drive or something like that, and I have all these images on my external hard drive, but my computer blows up and I no longer have access to that database that was stored on my computer. I can gain all of those keywords and categories from those files by going to that database catalog file functionality. And this will then, like I said, add all those keywords, add all those categories, add all your ratings, labels, that sort of thing to your ACDSee based on your files. So when you go through the process of adding keywords, at the by default, I'll bring it up here too. By default, ACDSee will embed ACDSee metadata at every time you shut down the software. There'll be a little indicator that will give you a little progress bar. And so if you've added any keywords, if you've added any categories, by default, that information is saved on shutdown. You can change it. You can change it to like the end of every month or every biweekly or something like that. But by default, that information is always saved to that file, which is important then because, like I said earlier, in that case that you have some sort of issue with your computer or something like that, you can reacquire, you can add those keywords to your database by cataloging your files. Okay. Can you show searching for a keyword in Windows File Explorer? Yes, I can. Okay, so this is when we were talking about earlier about the difference between iptc and ACDSee metadata. Again, ACDSee metadata is proprietary. It's not going to show up in Windows Explorer, but the iptc information will be. So if we were to take, let's say, an image that has an iptc field. Okay, so this hummingbird. Let's find this image. Okay, we got hummingbird number 1 we're searching for with iptc information filled out. Let's go to that one. Let's go to this guy and we'll right click on it and we'll go to properties. And I believe if we go to details, there you go. They call it tags in Windows, but the hummingbird and blue tag have been added to this file. So that coincides with what we've added within this iptc field right here. And again, this sort of highlights the importance of, if we want to add those ACDSee metadata to our iptc so that they're visible to virtually everyone, then we would go through the process of adding that preset that we've created earlier that allows us to then move that ACDSee stuff into the iptc. I'm just going to illustrate that once more too, because I think it's really useful, and I'm just going to give this like every single keyword in this list. Okay, so it's just got all its maximum keywords. So there they all are. If I go through the process of adding that preset to this image, the ACDSee keywords to iptc. So that one we've created right here, and I hit OK, and I apply that. All of those keywords have been moved to the iptc, and therefore, when we go to view this file, properties, all of that information will be added there, as you can see. So that's how you can see it in Windows File Explorer. Okay. Alec is still an ambassador. Yes, he still makes videos with us. Can you move iptc keywords to ACDSee metadata? That's a good question. I don't know if you can do the reverse. Let's see. I wonder. Oh, you know what? Can we go to manage presets and is ACDSee subcategory here? Yeah. So if we go to ACDSee metadata, keywords, this guy right here, insert metadata, iptc. Let's see, content. Oh, that's contact. We want content. Hey, what do you know? Okay, so what am I doing? Let's back this up. So I'm going to create another preset. The question is, can I now that I have all these keywords that are in here, can I take those and move them into the ACDSee metadata panel? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate down to the preset section that says ACDSee metadata, and I'm going to click right here on the right button, insert metadata, and I'm going to navigate to that exact field, which in this case is, as we can see, iptc content, and then hit keywords, and it should fill it. Let's see what happens. Sure, let's save this one as well. Let's say iptc to ACDSee keywords. Let's see what happens. I've never done this before. Content keywords. Yeah. So it applies that. Let's do it to this one. This one has no iptc. But anyway, so you can go through the process of adding that information vice versa. So that's kind of useful. If you want the keyword in iptc automatically inputting keywords from ACDSee meta, how would I set it up without manually cycling and clicking apply? I think that it would apply. Let's see here. Is there a way to do it without applying? No, it has to be applied. So when you apply it, you write it to the file. Without applying it, you don't write it. So it's never added. So it does need that process in place in order for you to finalize that information and write those ACDSee keywords into the file. So unfortunately, there's no route to that. There has to be like a stance in place that allows you to commit that change, because you are in this case changing property values in the file. Can you save iptc keywords as ACDSee keywords? We just did that. Okay, cool. Let's move on. There's much more questions, but I'll get to them in a second here. Okay. So we've talked about creating keywords. We've talked about explaining how to catalog our files, basically how to find those files based on those keywords. We've talked about the difference between iptc keywords and ACDSee keywords. We have talked about writable files. Writable files are JPEGs, TIFFs, things that where when you go to change those iptc values, that is written straight to the file and is there viewable by anyone, versus raw files where that information sits in sidecar files. If I want to provide someone those keywords or changes to a raw file, I would simply provide them that XMP file in addition to the file. That would be how I would get that. Manage metadata, insert metadata. We've done that. Okay. Yes. Okay, and we've talked about cataloging as well. Okay, so one other thing, you're probably wondering, this is sort of tangential to this, but you're probably wondering, okay, well, now that I have keywords assigned to an image, how do I go about searching for them? So I have some values in my iptc here. How do I go about searching for that? This is just a quick tool I learned recently. You can look for keywords by going into Windows and then typing keywords with a colon. And if we were to add a keyword in this case, say I looked up hummingbird, well, it'll find all of the files where, in this case, we have an iptc keyword listed there. So, which in this case were these two because we had written that keyword to those files. So that would be how you would. I had a question earlier this week where someone was like, "Hey, how do I actually find that now that I've added that iptc field?" So that would be how you'd go about finding that information. What you're looking for in this case is those change to the properties. But that is not as fast as doing the same thing within ACDSee. I can bring up all the hummingbirds I have in my entire by looking up the keyword. In this case, it sees that these have either hummingbird as a title or hummingbird as a, in the case of this one right here, which we renamed, in the case of the ACDSee metadata that has been embedded within it. Okay, Rick asked, is pending data not yet embedded? Metadata lost when the file is moved? It is. E.g., when I've reorganized my photo file structure. I believe that is exactly the case, actually. Let me think. Let's actually do a test. That's a great question. Whether or not moving the file to a new location does that. Let's go back to my folder. Let's add a new keyword to our gull image here. Let's also call it a robin. The pending flag pops up. Then let's move this file. I'm going to move this file to people and faces. So I'll look for my bird here somewhere, gull. Okay, so it still has that information within ACDSee. Let's close the program and open up again and see if it remembers, which I think in this case it actually will, which is good. What it won't care, or rather what I think what will be the case is that, like I said earlier, if we have some issues with a database, we want that information, we want those keywords, then we would have to embed it. We'd have to go through the process of embedding it. But let's find the file. Where did I say it was in people and faces? Which is down here. And that image is still here. Okay. So that's a great question. I didn't know this. We literally learned this together. Okay. So yes, ACDSee does remember that. It remembers that information. What's valuable about the process of embedding, like I said earlier, is when we're going through the process of cataloging our files. If we want that information, we have applied keywords, we have applied categories that we care about in our files. And we want to make sure that by process, when we embed that, when we've saved that file, perhaps we've moved that to an external hard drive, and it's become, dusty and old on our shelves or whatever, or we've moved it to a cloud drive or something like that, and we want to get that information off of that image in the future. That is how we do it. And that is partially why that embedding process is always applied at shutdown. Okay, so that answers that question. Really should embed all metadata as standard operating procedure. There are people that don't want it to happen automatically, and that's the reason why you can either turn it off or you can set the time period to be at the end of every month. I believe the original reason for that is because it slowed down their closing process. Like they wanted, if you had embedded, like if you say you had made changes to 10,000 files in one day, the process of like closing your software would be very arduous and slow. So I think that people wanted some degree of control over being able to say no to that operation or to choose when that operation is done. If you're working in a professional environment, maybe that is done when you go to archive, at the end of a month. That's maybe a part of your process is archiving everything. Like on a Friday at the end of the month, you leave your computer on before you go off for the weekend, that sort of thing. So people wanted a bit of degree of control. But I do agree, it's important and it should be embedded in your files. Anonymous asked, do you need to create different ACDSee databases for every drive you store your photos on? No, do you need a different ACDSee database? No. So how databasing works, databasing is actually kind of automatic. So when ACDSee creates a database, there's only ever at one point one database active. You basically choose whether or not you want to use a different database. But when you're browsing files, like when I open up a folder, and say I haven't opened up this folder in a long time, that information is, if it wasn't on my database, gets added to my database. So things like thumbnails, things like keywords and categories they were talking about earlier, all of this information is then displayed to us based on interacting by browsing with those files. So if you have a big folder of files that you don't want to database, either A, don't browse there, or start a new database. Like we've talked about earlier, save your pre-existing database, start another database, and then access whichever database you want for that information. But those databases are what's going to contain those keywords, those categories, those ratings, all of these things that we were talking about earlier. So when you shift to a new database, you can catalog, you can use that cataloging function to then add new information to that database. I have a video covering just this on YouTube called databasing. You can watch that. Yeah, it's like a, I think it's a 10 or so minute video, but that covers how to start new databases, where databases are saved, how do you get those keywords like we're talking about by cataloging images. So yeah, all of that's covered in a different image, or different video rather. Okay, we covered that. Do you need to create different ACDSee database for every drive? Okay, we just talked about that. Mitch asked, will there be future support for creating panoramic photos? I believe there isn't any currently. I believe that is something that has been considered. If you would like to see that feature, please email me. That's definitely something that we can always talk about or send to the developers. With any time you want a feature in the software, please email me. The reason why is because it enables you to basically have your voice heard for certain features. Can you add people from face recognition to iptc in the same way as keywords? Yeah, you sure can. Let's do that. So we've been talking about keywords and categories. Let's talk about face data. You'd have to apply it to a different field, but we can do that. Let's go to our face detection folder. We have a bunch of photos here. Okay, so I believe if we go to metadata, we'd have to apply those. Then we'd have to maybe add that information to a different folder. Let's say, or rather a different section. Let's put it in the keyword section. I think if we go to presets, the manage presets here, we can add insert metadata, ACDSee metadata, and face data should be in here. And face embed pending. What about just face data? Meta. Okay, let's see what happens if we just do this. File properties. So let's try that. Called this face data to keywords. There isn't like a field in iptc or exif. Again, these are universal file sort of fields. There isn't a field per se called like faces or something like that. So you'd have to find a unique area to put that. But I'm just going to try this and see. Okay, it notices that there is an embedded face, but it doesn't know if the name is. I might actually have to look in with the developers in regards to this question. Can you please email me that? That's a great question. I want to know the answer to it, but I don't know right off the bat. It's possible that that isn't considered the same sort of field as a that name that's been applied. There might be some struggles there, so I might have to check in with the developers in regards to that. But please touch base with me about that. Okay, can you search in Windows Explorer for IPT? Yeah, we did that. Cool. Awesome. Save photos. Okay, so Donald said, I save photos, buildings with camera JPEG. Could I search for specific JPEGs? Right. I believe you can filter, or sorry, rather, let's see here, sort by the file type, or in this case, I suppose it would be file type, it would be camera JPEG. But you could sort by file type. The other thing you could do is when you can, like we were talking about, this is the benefit of keywords, is when you have a folder with all of your your camera JPEGs in it, you can add an overarching category that is in exactly that. So I could say take all these face images and say they were camera JPEGs by just adding a new camera that is, or a category, which is camera JPEG, for example. Or say you have JPEG and then you want, or like different file types and you have subcategories. So then I can add that category to all those images. And then when I can search for exactly that. I can catalog by that. So to bring up all those images that have that category. So while you can search, you can always find a means of searching for specific photos by applying something like a keyword or a category. So if it's a unique function, again, like I think you can filter for that information, which would present all that info, those images to you. But I think the fastest way is to just catalog images by a specific field, in this case, camera JPEG. So why not? Oh, sure. Gary asked, can you just repeat searching via Windows? All it is if you're searching for a keyword field, you would add keywords and then the actual subject of your keyword. So you know, gull, you know, and it'll bring up images with the image, the keyword of a gull. So, and again, I need to stress this is iptc metadata, not ACDSee metadata. Again, ACDSee metadata is proprietary, and that's why we talked about the movement of it from the ACDSee metadata panel to managing those presets and adding it to the iptc. So, yeah. Marcine asked, so the category is more like a logical folder and the keywords can be edited inside the picture. Yes. Yeah. And again, they're different. Categories can also be embedded within the image. That's totally, you can do that as well. That's part of what is cataloged. When we go to database catalog files, it's listed in here, ACDSee metadata, including categories, keywords, tags, and collections, that sort of thing. So all of that information can be embedded within the picture and then pulled and verified and added to your database. Can I search for all photos that don't have embedded metadata and look through them to confirm that I want to embed metadata in them? Oh, great question. I believe that's possible. In fact, I know that's possible. Now, whether or not I remember how to do it is another thing. So searching for files that don't have metadata. Well, for example, if keywords was the option, you could look for filter all no keywords. And in this case, this folder contained no images that didn't have keywords because we'd apply keywords to all of them. I know that there's a way to do that though. If you can please shoot me an email, I'll ask the developers to get the answer for you. Because that's a great question, and I think that there's definitely a way to do so. Theodore asked, does facial recognition in ACDSee happen automatically? Like, no. Well, okay, it does. Yeah, sorry. It does happen automatically. It's just that you need to go through the process of starting to add names. And sure, let's talk about it too. We're sort of after the process of talking about the keyword section and more into the answering questions stage here. Oh yeah, filter all, cool. Let's find that folder that I had here. Okay. Face detection, I'll bring this into view mode, which is the subject where you actually add names to images. Excuse me. So when you add face data, okay, it's done in view mode and you go about adding a name. So in this case, Aaron. And then what it does is it looks for files in your database and it basically tries to add that information based on what that subject looks like. So this person, also Aaron. We can add another name here. Let's say Nadia. Let's see if there's, I don't know if I actually have another image of her. So let's add here, Haley. Let's add one here. So it's going to go through and it's doing its best guess to add that name basically to your other images. So you have Haley already in your database. That's a part of your database now. So when you add new images, provided that this person looks and is Haley, it's going to do its best to automatically run that function and basically apply that name to that person that is viewable in view mode. Now, what you might have happen every once in a while is say you have an image where it's not sure. It's not entirely sure that this person is Haley. Let's see if there's a good example. Sometimes when you have an image and you go to look at a different, if it doesn't place anyone, it means that it has no idea. But sometimes there'll be like a little checkbox or an X box basically that appears to the left or right of the image and allows you to basically flag that image as yes, this person is Rebecca, or no, this person isn't Rebecca. Whenever you add images with, so the more images of your subject you have in your database, the better it is going to be at looking for that person. Because with every new image that you add, you're providing new information about what that person looks like in side profile versus like front on or bird's eye view or whatever. So it has a better understanding of that person. Then it basically becomes better at learning about what that person looks like. Okay. So do happen automatic. So yes, it does happen automatically as long as that you've first gone through the process of adding this person's name. Can ACDSee databases be backed up automatically manually to different devices? Yes, they can. That's also, I believe, covered in the databasing video. But I think what you would do is you would go to Tools, Database, and then you could do backup database, and it'll allow you to back up to a specific location. Okay. No, I think, to create a category without a file is a good question. In the sense, do I have to have selected a file? I do wonder if that's the case. I've never had this panel open up without it. Let's see if we can create one. Set categories. It looks like you can create a category without having an image selected. You can just do so from the file panel here. So you could set a category by going to new category, and then allows you to create it even though that you have no images selected, it appears. So you don't always have to start with a file in order to create a category. Can two different users manipulate metadata of pictures on a shared drive? Manipulate metadata, yes, in the sense that they can both view the image, they can both write iptc information to the file, and then provided if you both have ACDSee, you can bring in those categories that someone else has then embedded within the file. So you can manipulate the metadata. It just might require a bit of embedding and catalog maintenance, if that makes any sense. It's all the stuff that we've talked earlier about in this video. So, okay, friends, it has been just over an hour for this video. I am sure you have more questions. This is a fairly large topic. Please email me if you do. Again, my email is aprice@acdsystems.com. I'm going to enter it one more time. This again, I've never really covered keywords and categories in one sort of workshop like this. I'm realizing too that there's probably a lot more that I could have talked about in this video, and I think that we might even aim to cover this again very soon. Two things: I will have this workshop up as soon as I can on YouTube. Another thing is I will, there's two other workshops that are coming up this month. One by myself touching on develop mode on the 21st, and then one ACDSee Gold workshop with Alec Watson. If you don't have Gold, you can log into your ACD ID, which is just the sign-in section on the website, and that one will be hosted for only our Gold members. But yeah, overall, there's going to be another free workshop that's going to be available to you on the 21st, and then one in early May with Alec. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys sticking around and talking about this. This is a really dense topic, and I'm really realizing I want to talk about it more because there's so many questions that I didn't have an opportunity to answer, or some questions that I just straight up didn't know the answers to. So again, reiterate, please email me, please contact me. I'd love to touch base with you and find out the answers to the questions that I weren't able to answer in this video. If your question wasn't answered, it's not that I'm ignoring you. It's just I don't know the answer to it. So, and I know a lot. I know more than most, you know. So yeah, Please touch base with me. And again, I'm so happy, and I really I always enjoy doing these. I think they're a lot of fun. What else do I have to say? Stay safe. Take care of yourselves in this trying time that we're in right now. And like I said earlier at the beginning of the workshop, ACDC is kind of committed right now and the next little bit to creating more content um, for users. So if you have any questions or suggestions for content that you'd like to see or tutorial videos, please email me. We've got myself and Andrea that are making tutorials over the next couple weeks. Yeah, and we'd love to create more. So that was keywords and categories. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for participating. And I hope you're well. Cool. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Dory. Thank you, Theodore. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Dave. Thanks, everybody. So just before I go, I just noticed that anonymous. Yes. Can a category be embedded? Yes. Yes, it can. As soon as you add a category, embed it. Awesome. I'm glad that this was informative. I'm super glad. Yeah. Cool. Stay safe, everybody. I'm logging off. And have a great rest of your Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever you're logging in. So.